She didn't smile. She didn't speak. And when the teacher gently asked why she wouldn't work with a partner, Clara whispered, "I'm not allowed to have friends." At first, it just seemed like shyness. But then came the bruises. The hoodie she never took off. The way she counted every pencil, like someone would be mad if she lost one. This is the story of a quiet girl. A lie buried in military uniform. And the teacher and detective who refused to let her disappear. If you believe no child should be punished for being afraid, like, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The school bell chimed precisely at 8 a.m. each morning at Elmwood Elementary, ringing in the day's lessons for the bright-eyed children who bustled into classrooms with backpacks, half-finished breakfast muffins, and gossip from the playground. Room 32 sat at the end of the hallway, large windows overlooking the blacktop where the older students played kickball under the watchful eye of teachers on recess duty. The room was typically a swirl of color, vibrant posters reminding children to be kind, bins of books with dog-eared pages, and broad bulletin boards displaying drawings of families, holiday scenes, and sometimes imaginative pictures of future careers. Ms. Lydia Alden had been teaching in that very room for 12 years, long enough to feel every inch of the space as part of her daily rhythm. She knew which corner of the ceiling leaked when the rains got too heavy, which sections of the old tile floors creaked underfoot, and which desks faced just the right angle to catch the morning sun. Teaching was not a fallback or a stepping stone for her, it was her passion. She prided herself on recognizing each student's quirks early in the semester. In her experience, small gestures, a reassuring pat on the shoulder, a careful word of encouragement, could make all the difference for a child struggling to fit in. So when a new transfer student, Clara Gibbons, arrived without fanfare one mid-September morning, Ms. Alden immediately began to watch her closely. Clara stepped in, wearing neat clothes and a faded pink cardigan, her slender arms wrapped tight around a stack of notebooks and folders. At first glance, she seemed perfectly put together. Hair pulled back in a ponytail, eyes downcast but not sullen, her lips pressed together in what might have been nerves. She had a soft voice. If one did not pay attention, it was easy to miss whatever she said entirely. Many kids were shy at first, and Ms. Alden presumed Clara just needed time to adjust. But small details piled up like pebbles gradually filling a jar. For one, Clara showed up each day in that same pink cardigan no matter the weather. Mornings were turning crisp, with leaves just beginning to fade into autumn colors, but some afternoons were still warm. Clara never shed the cardigan. It looked as though she used it as armor, something to wrap around herself whenever she felt the eyes of classmates upon her. Then came the matter of lunch. Each day, while other children teased one another about trading carrot sticks for potato chips or devoured peanut butter sandwiches with sticky grins, Clara never seemed to eat a normal meal. Instead, she had a small pack of dry crackers hidden in her pencil pouch, which she nibbled on as though rationing them. When her classmates asked if she wanted a bite of something else, she simply shook her head. During those early weeks, Ms. Alden tried to coax Clara into participating. She offered to show her around, introduced her to a few friendly girls who volunteered to be her welcome buddies. Yet each invitation was met with polite refusal or, more often, silence. Clara would murmur something about not needing help, or she would simply look down, as if the attention itself made her uneasy. The situation that truly ignited Ms. Alden's concern occurred on a day dedicated to partner projects. The class erupted into the usual clamor of children scrambling to pick teammates, giggling or whining if they did not get their first choices. But amidst the frenzy, Clara stayed rooted at her desk, arms folded. She did not lift her gaze or call out to anyone. Concerned, Ms. Alden walked over and bent down to Clara's level. "Do you need help finding a partner?" she asked gently, smiling to put the girl at ease. Clara responded in her barely audible voice, "I'm not allowed to make friends." The words were so stark they nearly knocked Ms. Alden off balance. She steadied herself, trying to keep her expression neutral. "And why's that, Clara?" she asked quietly. "My dad says making friends is for weak people," she answered, her eyes drifting to the classroom window as though wanting to escape the conversation. There was nothing defiant in her tone, just a subdued acceptance, as if repeating a rule from a handbook. Before Ms. Alden could press further, the shrill buzz of the end-of-day bell filled the corridors. Children began scurrying to fetch their backpacks, chatter exploding into a crescendo. Clara stood, quietly gathered her notebooks and left, leaving those cold words echoing in the teacher's mind. That night, Ms. Alden wrestled with the memory. She reflected on the countless students she had taught, from affable social butterflies to prickly introverts. But rarely had she encountered a child who so explicitly claimed she was forbidden from making friends. It sounded less like a personal quirk and more like a dogma drilled into her. The question gnawed at her. Was Clara's father simply strict, or was something more sinister happening? The next morning Ms. Alden reached out to the school counselor, Ms. Hopkins, who listened attentively but pointed out there was no visible sign of abuse. No bruises, no reported injuries, no erratic behavior except for the child's extreme caution. A home check without cause would likely yield no results, Ms. Hopkins said. Nevertheless, they agreed to keep an eye on Clara for any signs that warranted a deeper investigation. But the red flags did not stop. Clara never played at recess. She would stand at the perimeter of the blacktop, arms hugging herself, shoulders rigid. When asked by other kids if she wanted to join jump rope or foursquare, she answered with an almost robotic phrase, "Dad says games are a waste of energy." In a reading circle, she sat with stiff posture, contributing only the bare minimum. When the class read silly stories meant to prompt giggles, her face remained carefully neutral, as though laughing might bring serious consequences. The day that sealed Ms. Alden's suspicions was an art assignment in which each student was asked to draw their dream home. Most children delighted in drawing whimsical castles, bright pink houses with big yards, or futuristic mansions with rocket pods. Clara quietly sketched a box. 4 walls, no windows, a single hatch labeled as a trapdoor. In each corner she wrote short phrases like, "sleeping corner," "sit spot," "rules shelf." When asked to explain her drawing, Clara calmly said, "That's what safe looks like." No further elaboration, no flash of emotion. Just that. The image of a child's dream home as a cramped, windowless box haunted Ms. Alden long into the evening. She rummaged through Clara's student file, searching for any clues. The father's name was listed as Adam Gibbons, a single emergency contact number next to it. No mother was listed, no siblings mentioned, and the address on file looked like an older property on the edge of town. Ms. Alden phoned Mr. Gibbons after verifying the number, and he answered with a clipped, "Is she injured?" When told no, he promptly hung up, offering no conversation. It left her unsettled. A week later, Adam Gibbons appeared in person at the school in response to Ms. Alden's request for a brief meeting. The difference between how she had imagined him and the man who walked through the doors could not have been sharper. He was tall and lean, wearing a military-style jacket adorned with mismatched patches, dog tags around his neck that clinked with each step. His hair was trimmed in what looked like a standard crew cut. There was an air of feigned authority about him, as though he had practiced a posture of command. He extended his hand for a handshake, his grip so crushingly firm that it felt more like a demonstration of dominance than a greeting. "Good of you to keep the kids in line," he remarked to her, scanning the hallway for reasons unknown. "Obedience builds survival, right?" She forced a polite nod, noticing how he referred to children as if they were troops under his command. Clara stood behind him, her pink cardigan wrapped tight around her, eyes lowered. When Ms. Alden tried to address Clara directly, the man placed a hand on the child's shoulder in a gesture that was meant to look protective, though it felt more controlling. He called her his dependent, never once saying daughter. He praised discipline above all else, and his entire demeanor implied that any softness was a weakness. Then, as though dismissing the entire conversation, he thanked her, incorrectly calling her Miss Kelly, and strode off down the hall with Clara scurrying to keep up. The interaction left a chill in Ms. Alden's bones. Something was not right about him. She contacted Child Protective Services once again, explaining her concerns and describing how the father dressed, his mannerisms, and Clara's continued isolation. CPS conducted a visit, finding the house in impeccable condition, clean, orderly, well-stocked with groceries. Clara was polite, answering all questions with "yes, ma'am," or "no, sir," no signs of distress or visible marks. The father claimed to have served in the military, telling them Clara's mother had passed. With no contrary evidence, the case was marked as stable. It looked like a dead end. But the following Monday, Clara asked for extra worksheets, claiming she liked to practice twice. It was unusual but not impossible. Some children truly loved having more practice materials. Still, Ms. Alden sensed there was a hidden motive. She made a mental note to keep watch. On Thursday, when collecting homework, she found not one but 2 copies of the same math worksheet. The first bore Clara's usual neat handwriting, the numbers spaced evenly. The second, however, was messy, shaky, as if someone less practiced had tried to copy the answers. In the corner, faint and nearly erased, were words that froze her blood. "Put it back before he counts." She locked that second paper in her desk, her heart pounding. That evening, as the corridors emptied and the sound of children's laughter dwindled into silence, she sat there trying to make sense of it. If Clara had completed one worksheet, who had done the other? and who was so terrified that they scribbled a warning about returning it before he counts? Eventually, she remembered Detective Neil Harlow, who had served as a local liaison during a past incident, giving lectures at the school on personal safety. He was ex-military and known for his keen eye in spotting fakes, people who boasted about service or wore insignia incorrectly. She found Harlow at a small diner on the outskirts of town that evening. He listened intently as she laid out the suspicious details: the father's strange behavior, Clara's isolation, the second worksheet with the shaky handwriting. When she mentioned that Adam Gibbons wore certain patches and dog tags, the detective's expression darkened. "They might be fake," he said. "I've seen it before. People who pretend to have a military background to intimidate others." He offered to investigate quietly, telling her to stay close to Clara and let him know if anything else surfaced. Days passed and Ms. Alden's nerves frayed. She found herself glancing at Clara during lessons, noticing the girl's slender wrists, the way her eyes darted around as though she anticipated danger at any second. She also noticed a quiet determination. Occasionally, she saw the girl slip small pieces of paper into her cardigan pocket after finishing an assignment. Then came the next shock. Tucked at the bottom of a stack of spelling tests was not a test at all, but a hastily drawn map. It depicted a small basement with a flight of stairs leading down from a trapdoor. Rooms were labeled: storage, sleeping mat, other girl's room. In the corner, a single name stood out: Maddie. A wave of memory crashed over Ms. Alden. There had been a missing person poster for a local girl named Maddie Benton, who had vanished nearly a year ago near a different elementary school. She recalled the tearful pleas from Maddie's parents at a community meeting, the frantic searches that yielded no real leads. Now, unbelievably, Clara's mysterious second set of worksheets might be coming from this missing girl. She called Detective Harlow in a panic. That very evening, he came to the school after hours, rummaging through the dusty archives where they kept old flyers and notices. Sure enough, they found a tattered flyer of Maddie, last seen at age 9. Harlow compared the scrawled map to background details from the original police file. One note in the file suggested that an anonymous tip had mentioned a suspicious basement. No one had managed to track it down as the tip was too vague. But here it was, drawn out in crude lines labeled from the inside. Harlow took the shaky handwriting from the map and the second worksheet. He compared them to some of Maddie's old homework samples that had been scanned into the case file. There were strong similarities in the letter shapes. The detective concluded that Maddie might be alive, forced to hide or be hidden, somehow passing messages through Clara's extra homework. If that was true, it was monumental and terrifying. It meant Adam Gibbons, or whoever he was, might be holding Maddie captive, and Clara was trying to help her. They agreed on a plan. Harlow would put the house under surveillance, watch for patterns, confirm who lived there, and check if Maddie was actually inside. Meanwhile, Ms. Alden would keep Clara at school on a pretense of after-school tutoring, to ensure the girl stayed out of harm's way while the search warrant was executed. The aim was to find Maddie and rescue both children that very night. But the plan faltered at the outset. The next morning, Ms. Alden asked Clara to stay for some remedial lessons. Clara appeared uneasy, her gaze flitting to the clock, but she nodded. Harlow's team arrived at the Gibbons residence, an unremarkable one-story building with a small lawn, but they found it empty. Not just empty in the sense that no one was home. The place was gutted. No furniture, no personal belongings, no sign of forced departure. It was as though someone meticulously scrubbed the house clean of any trace of living. Cupboards were wiped, floors sanitized. The only clue came from a single shed out back. Beneath a loose floor panel, they discovered a duffel bag containing a worn pair of sneakers labeled Maddie, in blue marker, and a notebook. Each page in that notebook listed rules in a neat, chilling script. Don't talk. Don't cry. Don't forget who saved you. Harlow's voice trembled with anger when he called Ms. Alden. He suspected the father had realized they were onto him. Adam Gibbons or Charles Dunning, whichever identity he was using, had vanished, taking Clara with him. She never showed up that afternoon for the tutoring session, and she did not appear at school the following day. A sense of dread spread through the community. Flyers went up, this time bearing both Maddie's and Clara's names. Word spread among the neighbors, but nobody had seen them leave. For a week, Harlow chased every lead. He checked local highway cams, looked for credit card usage, contacted cheap motels and gas stations. Days dripped by, each one tightening the knot of worry in Ms. Alden's stomach. She pictured Clara out there, possibly forced to live in that same dreadful box-like environment she had drawn. She pictured Maddie, a girl who had been missing for nearly a year, her name all but lost among the swirl of daily life, now discovered but still trapped in some unknown place. It was a minor miracle when a waitress from a distant diner phoned the police tip line. She described a tall, stern-looking man who wore a paramilitary jacket. He came in with two young girls, both appearing tired and underweight. One child disappeared during a trip to the restroom and never returned to the table. The waitress grew suspicious and checked the restroom, found it empty. On the fog mirror, someone had written, "Back door. Help us." By the time she got back to the dining area, the man was already slapping money on the counter, ushering the children out. She managed to glimpse the first few digits of the license plate on his SUV. It was enough for Harlow to guess which route the father was taking. He rushed to a known rest stop off the highway, a secluded spot often used by long-haul truckers where security cameras were minimal. There, behind a row of dumpsters at the far edge of the lot, Detective Harlow found two trembling figures, Clara and another girl who matched Maddie Benton's description. They were huddled so close it looked like they were trying to disappear into each other. Maddie was shaking, her auburn hair matted, her eyes wide with terror. Clara clutched her pink cardigan around Maddie's shoulders as if trying to shield her from the world. Neither child spoke at first. They looked at Harlow with raw fear, unsure if he was friend or foe. "It's all right," he said gently. "I'm here to help." He knelt, arms raised to show he meant no harm. "Clara? Maddie?" The older girl nodded. Clara began to cry silently, tears slipping down her cheeks, but she did not pull away. Slowly, painstakingly, they stood, leaning on each other for support. Harlow guided them toward the parking lot, scanning for any sign of the man. They did not have long to wait. A black SUV screeched into the rest stop, headlights slicing across the dim space. The engine idled with a growl and the driver's door flew open. Out stepped the man known as Adam Gibbons, his face twisted with rage. He slammed the door behind him, eyes fixed on Clara like a laser. She flinched at the sight of him but did not let go of Maddie's hand. "Get back in the car," he barked, voice echoing in the stillness. "Now." Harlow moved to block him, keeping the children behind him. "They're not going anywhere with you," he said. The man glowered, his posture coiled like a predator ready to pounce. "You got a badge, detective?" he sneered as though challenging Harlow's authority. Harlow set his jaw. "I've got something better," he said in a low, calm voice. "A real service record." He was calling out the man's phony military persona, the false dog tags and the cheap imitation patches. It was an insult that cut deep. The man roared in fury, lunging forward with a wild punch. Harlow sidestepped, blocking the blow. Shards of gravel crunched beneath their feet as they grappled. The man thrashed and spat, but he lacked the practiced technique of genuine military training, relying instead on brute force. With a swift pivot, Harlow pinned him to the ground, knees pressing into the man's back. "Fake tags. Fake patches," the detective hissed, wrestling the man's arms behind him. "Everything about you is a lie." The struggle kicked up dust and small stones, but there was no escaping Harlow's hold. The two girls stood a short distance away, frozen. Clara was breathing hard, tears on her cheeks but also a fierce resolve in her eyes. She glanced at Maddie, then took a shaky step forward. She crouched by the man's neck, grabbed the cheap dog tags that dangled from his collar, and yanked them off. The clatter of metal hitting the pavement rang in the quiet lot, a final symbol of his deceit. Sirens howled in the distance as backup arrived, red and blue lights illuminating the scene. Officers piled out, weapons at the ready, but the fight was already finished. They found Harlow kneeling over the subdued man while Clara and Maddie watched, still clinging to each other. With rough efficiency, the police hauled him up and clapped cuffs onto his wrists. His eyes burned with hatred, but he was beaten. Clara let out a long breath, trembling from relief and terror. Maddie looked moments from collapsing, legs wobbling beneath her. Carefully, Harlow guided them toward the squad cars. The night air felt charged, every breath dense with adrenaline. The father, real name Charles Dunning as later confirmed, was forced into the back seat of a patrol car, hurling foul curses that trailed off into the distance. Days later, Clara slipped back into room 32 at Elmwood Elementary. Her classmates glanced up, more curious than ever. She still wore the pink cardigan, but her posture no longer shrank under invisible weight. The usual morning hustle bustled around them, some kids comparing lunches, others finishing last-minute homework. When the teacher asked them to form groups for a reading exercise, Clara stood. Without a tremor in her voice, she walked to a girl at the next table and asked, "Want to sit with me?" It was one small, ordinary moment in a classroom, but to Ms. Alden, it was like seeing a flower blossom where only scorched earth had been. Somewhere else in the building, Maddie Benton was safe at last. Charles Dunning had been charged with kidnapping, child abuse and identity fraud, among other offenses. The authorities had confirmed he was no soldier, just a cunning manipulator who played the part to instill fear and obedience. Detective Harlow confirmed the details, but by then the entire community knew how he had orchestrated the rescue at that lonely rest stop. After school, Ms. Alden found Clara lingering by the art room, holding a small spiral notebook with a stiff spine. It looked old, its cover battered. For a moment, the teacher feared it might contain some new revelation. But Clara simply opened it, revealing pages of typed rules: don't talk, don't cry, don't forget who saved you. She had found the nerve to destroy it, one sheet at a time. She dropped it piece by piece into a metal waste bin. When the last page fluttered in, she exhaled, her small shoulders relaxing as though an invisible chain had fallen away. Thank you for watching. If you believe the truth should always come to light, be sure to like and subscribe for more.